Well, hello people, and welcome back to part 9 of Kokai, our modded CS2 build. We're having a wonderful day. Spent the last few episodes building up the town of Triton here against the water, but it is time to turn our attention back toward the industry, and this time forestry. Taking inspiration from a forestry plantation I drove past a million times, I have some inspiration as to how to organise a log and timber yard, with a local plantation also nearby as well. So let's get stuck into this one. Always love a hillside forestry build. So using today's inspiration, I think we're going to put our forestry yard over here. So to just have a brief look at Kokai's production chains. We're actually not in need of timber, but I'd at least like to get the industry set up here. And then of course, over time, we will eventually address oil or coal and stone. Likely we'll use stone in a cargo port build at some point. Which, given the industry demands, might not be too far off. We did mention a ferry port over here last episode, but we will get that somewhere. So I think we're going to build it here, opposite our farms. So I'd like to just readdress exactly how this road leaves the area here. So given the fact that industry doesn't really generate that much traffic in CS these days, a significantly amount less more than it did in CS1 at least, I think we can afford this kind of junction. If it doesn't work, we'll give it a dedicated entrance. I mean, where does this road go? There's actually also connecting to the outside connection up here too. So I reckon we'll also connect this into here as well, just so there is another entrance outside of the one we have to help support the build. So let's start the build by drawing out a bit of a road frame here as to how everything's going to develop. I do want the dirt roads here too. So straight out of this one, this will curve around here and then come through our forestry yard. We should go for a little bit and then we can build processing and manufacturing out of here as well, with lots of detailing, so we'll run that to the end. And then for the actual forestry bit of the forestry build, where the forest will be harvested and kind of manufactured and whatnot, I'd like to have a road that exits further down the facility here. Now let's put on our topography view, because I would like to have this forest, well essentially we'll expand this palette that we've got here. I'd like this to be the harvestable area, if you like. So with our topography view on, I would like to begin to climb this mountain and then just have a couple of little stray dirt roads that head up the road here. Not at all bothered about gradient at this point. Also have another one come out this way. Cool. So just some general rough road sculptures that will allow us to have that industry in there. We're going to have a harvestable forest up at the top, and then down by the highway is where it's all going to be processed. So I think in terms of what we're going to have up against the highway, I'd rather this all be prop work, and we'll get lots and lots of chopped logs in here as well, which is an aesthetic we really want to run with. So I reckon we'll have our log yard right up against the highway here, which will be a really nice bit of orientation too for the main highway. Be a bit of an industrial corridor down here, where in it we'll have farms one side and then forestry the other, which I think will be a really cool aesthetic when that's done. So I think we'll do a bit of easing with some of these industrial manufacturing assets. And I reckon we've even got the scope to double these up as well. So we're working with 5x3 there, so we know we're going to want a depth of 6 to work with. And let's put this on a bit of an angle. Let's have it up this way. Go ahead and grab our couple of buildings here. Twist these guys to run this way. Now, of course, a lot of better Bulldozer is also going to be warranted here as well. And maybe even a little bit of a better Bulldozer will probably be warranted here as well, just to tidy up some of these assets. But either way, just to create a bit of a forestry processing build in here. Now, of course, in terms of what grows in from the game's perspective, I'm not super bothered about it, I don't think. And then again, we'll come back to those 5x3 manufacturers, make sure we have Anarchy on here as well, so no one despawns. And then we can arrange these to essentially be what is in a forestry district our sawmill, essentially, where those raw logs are processed either into sawdust or plain timber. Cool. You're driving past here, you get a little glimpse into this industrial processing yard, which is fine. We are playing with some pretty gnarly terrain here, so I reckon before we proceed any further, I really should have done this at the start. Let's level off, I think, to a height we're happy with. I think we're going to slightly embank it against the national road. I think that'll look quite good, actually. So let's cut all that back. And I think where we do have all these nodes with the current infrastructure, let's just grab all of those on a marquee. So everyone down to the same height as this node over here. And that should make things a little easier, especially when you're doing, well, planning to do so much prop work around here as well. It's better to have a flatter terrain when you're working with the props, otherwise you'll end up with all sorts of kind of floating jank, if you will, for lack of a better phrase. Sure, tidy all that up. Everyone's happy with that. Fantastic. Let's come back and grab our roads. Probably connect in there as well. It's going to make logistical sense, isn't it? And then probably down to here. A lot of texture work will also help blend in the road networks today as well. Cool. I reckon we'll even go for one more. Cool. So we're already getting a couple of little trucks driving into our yard here. I'm happy with that. So let's talk about the enormous aesthetic that will surround these things. So first of all, let's get a surface down. We're going to want something pretty muddy here. I'd even argue riverbed might actually be a good shot altogether. Or we could do mud. I think we will go for the mud aesthetic. So let's run our surface through this area for right now. It's likely it'll stand pretty much down toward the highway here as well. And just pull it into the corners so there's no overbit slapping. So I've changed out this texture for the riverbed. I can't stay away from solid textures, and that mud texture was really pretty janky for this theme. So we're back with Sully, as always. But the next bit I want to talk about now we have the processing in is actually going to be a key aesthetic of a log yard. Of course, as we see from our Google Earth inspiration, is the aesthetic of logs. So when we do come in to find it and search for logs, there's a number of different ones of them. I think there's like up to 18, is there? Yeah, 18, and then there's log random, which as you place it, will give you a random one of those previous 18 logs. Well, I think for an industry like this, it's likely the logs will probably cut to size, I imagine. So, run one with this, anyway. So I want lots of piles of logs, especially over here by the highway. So let's talk about how we're going to do this. So we're going to come onto our line tool. Now, usually we'd just do a normal line tool here with a rotation, but the logs will only go down to a spacing of 5.3 meters, even on a 90-degree rotation. You can't get them below, which is a little bit annoying, I guess, and that's just a problem with the prop. But what we can do is actually come to wall-to-wall mode, which will put them wall-to-wall, and then you can dictate how far apart they are with that spacing variation there. So I'm going to stick to 0.2. It's going to give them a little bit of humanization to it, you know, not everything's perfect in a straight line as if it was organized by a robot, person in a forklift or some kind of telehandler has obviously dropped these here. So I think I'm happy with, maybe even dump that down. You can move increments by holding control as well. That'll move by 0.2 or 0.1, and then without control move entire decimals. So that's how you can change it just with the control buttons. So I'm going to go with spacing variation of 0.2 and then an offset variation of 0.1. And let's get a nice big wide stretch in here. I'm glancing back to my Google Earth inspiration, and they are very, very long stacks of logs. So I'm going to do 117. All right, why not? So that's going to give us a nice big row of logs. But of course, in these places, they tend to be stacked. But now it's just a case of amending our elevation step here. So I'm going to bring it up to, say, 0.3. And then I just want to gauge how much they clip in the previous layer. That's probably a little bit too much for me. So again, holding control, we can have finer control over the increment. And then with this here, I'm going to change this next elevation up to 0.4 meters, which looks to me about right, does it? Maybe even justify 0.5. Let's try that. Maybe that's a little bit better actually, isn't it? 0.5 there. And then I maybe don't want to repeat this all the way along, so let's just have it as long as my log is pretty much covering the same amount of distance here. So let's do slightly less on each side this time. And that'll give us an aesthetic like that, okay? And then you can see how this works. I know that each elevation of log stack is essentially 0.5 meters. So for layer 3, if you like, it's going to be 1 meter. Again, I'm going to make it slightly narrower this time. Let's do a row here, and then maybe let's skip a little bit and then start again. then end just slightly before. Then hopefully, before we know it, we'll have a pretty convincing stack of logs using the line tool. The sooner copy and paste is integrated back into MoveIt, the better, because this stuff becomes significantly easier, but just a slightly few extra steps, alright? And now, as you can see, you really get that visual aesthetic of piled timber, don't you? Which I think is probably the most important aspect. I think visually, certainly for a forestry area, isn't it? Is to have that that visual of very stacked logs from destroyed forest, essentially. That's what we'll do through here. a lot of prop detailing, and again, we'll be looking back to Google Earth as to how we can take inspiration for how these log yards are laid out. So whilst we have our log storage and our log processing / sawmills, we don't have anywhere to, I guess, process the planed timber. So I've driven past this place a number of times in real life and have seen on a number of occasions very big, very tall stacks of plain timber that's been cut and is either, I assume because they're leaving it outside, it's obviously not weather resistant, or maybe it is, maybe they treat it with something so it does become weather resistant. But it very much looks as though it's just kind of there to be picked up by an eventual flatbed at some point. So we struck down some more of Sully's texture. I'm going to stick this on a road here. Probably do a little bit of a tree line behind the stacks here as well at some point. Cool. So now we have another area here. So now I want to search for, say, planks. I'm actually not sure of the actual prop name here. Let's actually just go through. And we'll go to... So let's see if it's in the new update. I'm not sure if it is. Yes, it is. Or is it? No, I don't think they included them in the new update. There's the regular crates, which I guess you could argue could be plain timber. But it's not the asset I'm after, so we'll use FindIt together instead. Yeah, wood stacks is what I'm after. So this asset here, there is 4 of them. And again, as always last time, there is a random of the select 4 as well, but I want pretty much the same one. So we'll dig out some industrial assets to act as a place that cuts this plain timber anyway, away from the separate log processing, because again, looking back to our integration, there's 2 very distinct yards of the 2 there. And then pretty similar situation with this, but this time we shouldn't need the wall-to-wall mode. We should be able to bring these guys down to fit just as we like. Cool, and then let's see where we want these piled up. Let's maybe go for a slightly different angle here. Let's do maybe this way, so we'll do 26 meters. And then the very same process again. I just want to use those tools. Of course, this is a different prop this time, so we have to make sure we give enough room for it to breathe without it floating. There's always a good way to just do one before you do the rest. Hopefully these props are going to be pretty well aligned. And that's bang on, isn't it? I couldn't have got that. But better on if I tried. I swear to God, that was not pre-planned. That was just a guess. So 1 meter, it would appear these little log planks are. So when we delete that second one, we will find it back in our FindIt. Wood stack number 4. And then with that elevation, we want to be up by a single meter. Line up our prop work here again. Have a stack of timber. Same thing again. We know that next layer is going to be 2 meters, of course, because they're a meter each. So you can then just stack it and continue to work it like so, giving us the visual of stacked processed timber just across the road from where we have our stored freshly cut timber, essentially, right? Well, that would be the visual here. We hope anyway. It's going to be a long old detailing session, this one. And then with this road, I want to bring this dirt road up just so we can have a little bit of access here. I might even use some of those decoration modules that come with the industry stuff. Maybe looks a little bit more oil associated, that one, doesn't it? How about some of the other ones? I guess that's the most forestry looking one, is it? Not entirely sure. But again, because these don't need road connections, they are just props. We can place a few of these down, do some clever fusing here to make a little bit of a larger warehouse, if you like. Of course, the point of doing this build is to actually help satisfy some industry demand, so I don't want to do this everywhere. At some point, I also do want to actually plot buildings down. So to help with that, let's drop in some more. I don't think there's any forestry specific things either. There's just the forestry storage, which from my experience plopping actually doesn't really fill up. But it is just storage, really. I think in this case, I'm going to grab some of the 2x4 manufacturing. Let's just get 3 of these down, shall we say. And again, I'm just going to fuse them into one continual unit so it looks like a larger industrial warehouse or processing unit, sawmill, pulp mill, engineered wood plant, whatever you want to use to get them. But hopefully with that industry demand in the city, yeah, there we go. We will actually fill out with businesses, and this one just happens to be storing textiles. I reckon we'll get some more in here as the episode goes on as well. Cool, but very brief spy samples across what is a very large space to fill here. You can see how it'll grow out. We'll have a lot of fun with this, hopefully. But now it comes into actually making the forestry functional, which is obviously a really important aspect of a build here. So let's come into our zoning, and we're going to grab our specialized industry, and we'll grab, of course, forestry. So with Anarchy on, you can actually go outside of the radius that these things set up, but you want to make sure you don't do that because anything outside of it won't actually collect it. So if I'm going to cover this whole area, let's say I'm going to have one here, all right? Again, I'm going to leave Anarchy off while I do this because I don't want to go outside of the radius. Otherwise, again, it will not work. So just be really careful of that, otherwise you won't have a functioning forestry from setting all this up. Even though we are repurposing a lot of the placed modules as sawmills and whatnot. Let's bring all this in, and then we'll place it like that. Okay, so it has a little bit of forestry to work from now. I'm just going to get that forestry area on it. But for these forestry plantations, they're very much kind of plantations, and you can tell by the organization of the trees. So with Anarchy on, we're going to put on line tool again. Now I really want to mess about with a couple of settings here. So let's go for slightly larger space than that, shall we? Maybe even about 9, maybe a little bit less than 9 meters. 8 meters seems pretty sensible, doesn't it? I think we'll go for 8 meters then. And then here, I really want them all to be the same age, really. I guess we could put them in as saplings and watch them grow. I think that might be... I guess maybe we could have different areas. This can be a younger sapling field. Maybe further up the mountain we can have some more fully grown trees, perhaps. And then before we do that, actually, I'm going to come out of my line tool and let's just do a little bit of forest brushing. So, don't want these trees here. You can leave them in if you want. They will still be harvested, and it will still collect them. But just because of the visual I'm after here, I'm going to remove a lot of them. This is only quite a small one at the start, but when we do this kind of 3 or 4 times across the mountain, it will eventually kind of give that very obviously planted, repetitive tree design. So we're just looking to remove the trees that are in that initial forestry area there. That's happy for me. So let's come back onto the line tool. We want, and then once we're back in the line tool, we have our tree selected. We also want random rotation as well, so that way they're not all facing exactly the same way. And then let's just go up from, let's say here, right up to the top. And then you can do this as many times in as many different configurations as you like. You can do this before or after you place the forestry area. But of course, you'll see the impact of it. And we end up with a lot of very obviously planted trees here, just for the reason to be harvested. Obviously, we're giving each tree kind of room to grow here. And thanks to our random variation offsets, you can also do the same thing as well with the spacing variation and offsets as well if you want it to be, you know, a little bit more staggered. You can see there if we do a larger spacing variant, it's going to really start staggering, which looks a little bit more unnatural. These things tend to be very religiously sort of repetition and planted. Okay. And as our forestry vehicles work around this area, like we saw in Edinburgh, our little forestry buildings will, and like we saw in Edinburgh, our little forestry vehicles will come out and they'll harvest this, which is really a lot of fun. So we have a company in here now, 52 employees, which is quite good. And we look at that, how interesting, our little bit of industry here has triggered another spike in commercial. And that's just maybe businesses coming in here, maybe. No, not quite yet. They are still a little bit empty. But that is interesting, isn't it? We have spiked up again there. And then, just like we saw in Edinburgh, we will see our little telehandler people go out and start harvesting the trees, which is very exciting. So what I'm also looking for here as well is like a very obviously kind of false forest. I want to see very annoying lines of trees in and amongst the natural forest in the kind of tree hills of Kokai, if you like. Okay? I want it to look a little bit unnatural because you definitely notice that with these forestry plantations. There we go. There we go. It's so cool. Of course, remember if you watched the forestry build in Edinburgh quite a while ago now, you will see them actually cut the tree down, and they'll leave a little stump. If we can, I don't think there's one over here, is there? Unless he's going to cut one down for us now. You okay, Mr. Log Loader? Maybe not. And if you are kind of unsure whether or not you're still within the remit, if you would amend the district here, and just grab a node, you'll see that there is still a harvestable resource within the area, which is obviously what you want to make sure is happening there. To make sure that you are actually having functioning forestry. So that'll be the technique for bringing in very long rows of pine forest, and we'll essentially do this basically where we've got all these roads set up to do it. And just fill as much space as we can, so we're harvesting tons and tons of timber to eventually process into our production chain and probably export as well. Oh, would you look at that? Big old traffic jam. You guys alright? Why is there so many here? We haven't planted any residential today, unless they're still moving in from last episode maybe. A big old rush of cars coming down the motorway here. You have quite severe jams. It's probably a sign of this interchange wanting to be fully developed, isn't it? Maybe we'll do that in a few episodes. Down to a full interchange like that. This super node's still holding out okay there. Maybe that's just a rush of residents, is it? That's usually what that indicates, but we haven't placed any residential since a couple of episodes ago. Yeah, they're all transporting. I think it is just a rush of population. So it should calm down once it all goes away. It usually does. Yeah, once it's all backed up. That's fine though. That's fine. We'll filter off. But otherwise, that now leaves an immense amount of repetition detailing to help tie this area together. Again, always glancing back to our inspiration in Google Earth. We'll get some parking up here as well for any residents that work at the lumberyard. And then I get all of our false trees planted as well. I don't want to leave this too long, otherwise they'll all be at differing life stages. There we go, he's just cut them down now, has he? Very nice indeed, returning from the lumber. Which visually is just so cool, isn't it? Then that lumber will technically appear over here. Which will be very cool, satisfying bit of industry, we hope anyway. Either way, settle in, get yourself some snacks and make a coffee. And let's do some detailing. Alright guys, I think we're done. That was an immense amount of detailing, as always. So I really love this big forest scar on the hill. And with our texture work here as well, it really looks like this industry is eaten into the natural forest. So I reckon as our demand for wood continues to outweigh this build, which for the record, we're now in a 24-ton surplus of timber a month. And we're making some pretty decent dents into our wood goods over here as well, with furniture, paper and timber just in a very small deficit. So that's really helpful for the production chains, but as that demand falls, as the city grows larger and larger across the island, we can essentially come back here and just expand these forestry plantations, right, to eat into the natural forest. So that's the plan with this build anyway. It should evolve over time as the demands increase, which would be really cool, I think. Either way, let's have a look around. Lots of overgrowth and forest work around the bottom near the road here. And then we did actually manage to find a Stefan's Stump sawmill sign, which is absolutely perfect. I love all the themed billboards in the game, and that's just such a nice little one to have there, isn't there? There's also one down here too. Stefan's Stump, which is ever so slightly in the fence there. Let's pull that forward. It's a nice little sawmill sign. Some car parking as we enter the facility, which has been wrapped up pretty much entirely with chain link fencing where you would expect to find it. A plank factory over here, I think we've got. Yeah, he's turning wood into timber. Over here, we arrive at a little kind of, I guess, mock distribution point where there's some trailers waiting. Variety of props and industrial units, gas bottles, generators, spare vehicles, crates and whatnot. Our big log yard came out really nicely. Decided to fill the center with a little bit of, essentially, you know, what remains of what's on top of the hill there, as it was all cleared out. Obviously a big section here cleared out for log storage, which came out really nicely, didn't it? Really love this aesthetic of piled logs. I think forestry is probably my favourite of the four industries to build, I think. It's, I think, definitely the most fun to work with because you can do so many things with the logs and the trees and stuff like that. It's really cool. Some log loaders knocking around here, some with and without the trucks on them. And then same deal over here too. I ended up switching out some of these buildings here for some manufacturing because what we'd placed was storage. So we now have timber and furniture processing going on here as well. As I think there's also some paper around here too. More spare kind of storage for these harvesters that are just waiting as part of the fleet to go out and start a shift, for example. With a little bit of a barn over here too. That sits into just generally overgrown land. Where we arrive at a truck doing a U-turn in the building. Well, this is very cool. And we have just opened up the back of the industry buildings here with texture extension and removal of fences wherever we needed to. And then this just collects into a nice little back alley. More car parking for workers over this side. Across from the log yard here, we have what we saw on Google Earth, which was that sort of just plank storage, wasn't it? You know, all that plain timber's been cut, measured, packaged, and it is now ready to go to the distribution centre to be picked up by somebody. And then there's lots of little prop works around here as well. Some of those detailing assets in, drop some of the planks on the log trailers. More of those vehicles, more planks around the side. I've also got some of the wood chip things here as well. which I didn't actually realise were animated. These are from the new update. So it's pretty cool to see some kind of like wood chip storage kind of in the back of the facility there. You can just kind of see it from the distance, can't you? It was just sort of sat over here. So I really like how that came out. Then lots more prop work, fence work around the back of here as our general processing centre comes together. I really like how it turned out. Great inspiration from the forestry yard near me. It's just how to position everything, and our different bits of the facility are broken up together. So yeah, we've also got a little car park over here too, which is quite nice, all stained and decarred where we have concrete, where it would obviously make sense in an industrial build like this. And then our fields are full of various different ages of spruce, essentially, ready to be farmed. And then we did just use the log brush here, again, inspired by Clover Pie's build here. The aesthetic of a blitzed forest in and around industry is something really cool. Hadn't really considered the, I guess, surrounding aesthetic of a forestry build. This is what this whole area is really inspired by as well. So really, really cool. Some saplings beginning to grow back in the blitz landscape again as well, as the industry of Kokai demands more. We will of course cut more and more into it and got all this area to fill over here. We could even break out a bit of a district over here and fill this hillside. So a really expandable industry. Towards the end of the dirt roads we have some just general texture work to fill the space. It's kind of a well-trodden forester's path, if you like, is the general vibe here that we're trying to go for, which is quite nice, I think. And the guys up here, they get wonderful views across Kokai. They can see down to Sully over here, down to the waterfront. They should be able to see a little bit of Upper Sully over this way. Maybe just a little bit of Triton over there. Yeah, you see just a little bit of the Triton town there as well. That's pretty cool. But yeah, so these are continuing to grow. We now have all these which are going to grow up into all adult spruces ready to be harvested. There we go. We can see the adult ones being cut down. That's so cool. I loved that this happened in Edinburgh. Yeah, you can see where they're all being cut now, and then visually they arrive just over there in those big piles. Definitely my favourite industry in the city, this one. Super cool. A little bits of detailed here, rocks, textures, more fallen trees and whatnot, as the industry sits within the area that it occupies. And I think the traffic jams here are rush hours. We're also getting a lot of burnt down buildings over there. We'll have a look at that in a second. Yeah, but I think the chokes here, I think they're the rush hours, because we're coming up to 5 to 9 now. So technically everyone is on their way to work. We'll see here. It gets busy, and then it dies off again after the rush hour, which is very cool. That has to be said, isn't it? It's the first time I've really noticed the rush hours in the game, playing with these smaller highway networks. But, you know, I like a bit of a traffic jam in the morning. It just sort of makes it feel a bit more realistic, doesn't it? So I like that. A fence and more tree work around the edge of the facility. And it sits in very nicely at the foot of the mountain across the road from the farms with a really cool industrial processing centre. But otherwise, guys, that will do it for today. Thank you so much for watching. A massive shout out to the patrons that support these videos, with a special roll call to Louis Adlam and Oh Hey Casino. Thank you for all your support, guys. You are legends. If you'd like to help support the channel, Patreon and Instant Gaming are both linked down below. Either way, this has done some wonders for Kokai's production chains. We do need to keep on top of this industrial demand, because we've seen what happens when you don't in Edinburgh. It kind of cripples and falls apart as the production chains become, well, not very well supplied. So maybe next episode we'll keep on maybe with some mining industry, I think. I am due to travel to Finland next week. I'm trying my best to get as much recorded in advance as possible, but it's possible we might miss next Friday's Kokai. Depends how much I can get done. Don't forget to check out some of the new city showcases that are up on the channel too. And thank you for all the support in that series. It's really nice to see you guys enjoying it as well. So thank you for the support there. And thank you for continuing to also support Kokai. Otherwise, I'll shut up and leave it there. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, enjoy the rest of your day.